Being a new player in any video game and playing it for the first time can be an unforgettable experience. Making mistakes as a new player is part of the experience, but some mistakes can be so game-changing that they can ruin your whole playthrough, which would make it unfun, resulting in a complete restart or simply quitting due to wasted time. Throne and Liberty is one of those games where making one mistake can cost you time, resources and money. In order to not make those mistakes, I have prepared this video, which will show you every mistake I made when starting Throne and Liberty and things that most veterans won't tell you in order to slow down your progression. When I was leveling for the first time, it took me 3 days to reach level 50. Yes, back then some quests were much harder to do, the damage wasn't as high, and I would often die to monsters and elite mobs. But leveling could have been much easier and faster if I upgraded my gear and skills. Luckily now, the game gives a crazy amount of materials and skill books to upgrade your gear and skills as you are leveling, which increases the time and efficiency. So every 10 to 15 levels, go into town, craft new gear and upgrade it. Never dissolve any green, blue or purple gear items. In Throne and Liberty, gear is never useless and it can always be used to gain something. Unless you really need materials gained from dissolving gear, then avoid doing it. Always check if the gear has traits you need to upgrade your own weapon. If not, check the auction house if you can sell that trait for Lucent. If it's not valuable, then check if that gear item lithograph is worth anything. If it's not worth selling, keep it until you have enough of these gear items to fill up material conversion up until level 4 or level 5. In a worst case scenario, you can add that gear item into lithograph book collection and start ticking off some of the categories for great rewards. One of the biggest mistakes I made that set me back weeks was transferring my +9 blue gear pieces into purple gear without any traits. In the early game, your endgame gear for the first month will be blue gear, as fully traded +9 blue gear piece is better than 0 traits +6 purple gear piece. I made the mistake of going full purple gear set very early, where I had 0 traits, 0 materials to push the gear to +9, and I also spent all of my skill books to get wrong skills to purple tier first. With this one mistake, I was weak in PvE, I was being one-shotted in PvP, and I couldn't kill anyone in PvP. Remember, only transfer from blue to purple gear if you are confident that you can get at least some traits leveled up and unlocked on that purple gear piece. Another key thing that in a way set me back a bit and slowed down my progression was solo play and not joining a guild sooner. Throne and Liberty is a very social game with a high focus on guild versus guild content. Playing solo is possible, but after some time you will notice that you are falling behind others. Right now the game offers more content for solo play, but still the ultimate endgame content requires either a group or a guild. I'm not going to say that you can't play solo and that you have to join a guild, but from my own personal opinion, playing solo for first month made me realize how much bored I was getting and how unfun the game started to become. Until I joined an active guild and started doing guild related PvE and PvP content. And that was when I realized how awesome Throne and Liberty actually is. Another big mistake I made was focusing only on dungeons. Not overall PvE, just dungeons. For a whole first month I would only do dungeons every single day. It was possible to spam almost endless amounts of dungeon runs due to NCSoft giving daily dungeon tokens in mail every single day. You would log in, open your mail, and there was a gift which let you do up to 10 dungeon runs. This wouldn't be a problem, but clearing dungeons early game was fairly slow as nobody knew mechanics, nobody had good gear, and a lot of time was wasted on re-clears. After 3 to 4 clears, I would already learn the dungeon, but the issue was that every run required a new group, and in 90% of the cases, there were players doing it for the first time. Some didn't care about mechanics, some didn't want to listen to anyone explain mechanics, some were very toxic, and it ended up disbanding the group and having to start over. On top of that, finding a tank and a healer was also very time consuming. Even today when I log in on my first character, there are still over 100 tokens. And I was doing them every single day for a month, and I still have 100 plus tokens. You can imagine how many of these tokens NCSoft was giving out every day. By spamming dungeons every day, I completely ignored every other content available. Due to bad RNG, I wasn't getting good drops to upgrade my gear or sell it, and since I played solo, I had nothing else to do. If spamming dungeons 24/7 wasn't bad enough, another mistake I made was not knowing how to gear my character for the skill build I was playing. I had completely wrong gear pieces with wrong stats, and it made my character weaker despite having full purple gear. You would think that the gear dropped from dungeons would be best in slot, but I learned too late that open world dungeons and open world bosses drop a different and better gear. Grinding for wrong gear and upgrading it set my character so far back to the point where I was never able to make my gear right, and I ended up quitting the game. To avoid this mistake, please use Questlog website to find yourself a gear build, and do not make the mistake of upgrading pieces just cause they look cool and shiny. On top of upgrading completely wrong gear pieces at that time, I had no idea what traits are and how they affect the character. So like every other beginner, I put whichever traits I was able to unlock or level first. Since I transferred all of my blue gear to purple, and on top of that wrong purple gear, I even had wrong traits on all these purple gear pieces. It was very hard to get purple gear drops due to RNG, so my character was so badly geared that I'm honestly ashamed of myself seeing it nowadays. This can tell you a lot. If an experienced MMORPG player like myself can make these beginner mistakes of not understanding these core systems, you can imagine how hard it might be to someone completely new. To not make this mistake, I strongly encourage you to use Questlog website to find the traits that work for your build. As a free-to-play player, the amount of Lucent you can generate won't be crazy high. Every now and then you will get an item that's worth selling on the auction house, netting you some Lucent. But what you do with that Lucent is important. Unlike me, who managed to get lucky early on with some very expensive items, but ended up spending that Lucent on completely worthless and useless things. Since everything sold on auction house was super overpriced early on, and anyone smart could see that it's not worth it, I spent 75% of all the Lucent I gained buying items and traits I didn't even know how to use and didn't even need. The rest of the 25% Lucent I had left I spent on stupid cosmetics I didn't even like. Nowadays you can make a lot of Lucent from many different ways as a free-to-play player, but you should still know what to spend it on and at which price, because trust me, everything will be super overpriced and expensive for the first 2 months. Have you ever heard someone say in MMORPG, you can never have enough gold? Because that's true in Throne of Liberty. You can never have enough Solant. I didn't know that, of course, and I never really farmed it. Until one day I decided to upgrade gear after a long grinding period. I had about 5 million Solant, and I was confident I could upgrade most of my gear pieces to max level, as I had enough other materials. Not even 5 minutes into upgrading session, I spent all 5 million Solant and ended up upgrading one gear piece. This made me realize how important Solant is. I spent the next 3 days farming Solant in open world dungeons and spent all of my abyssal tokens there. Ended up with over 15 million Solant, which I thought would be enough for the entire set to be upgraded. But I was wrong again, as not even 15 million Solant was enough. Unfortunately, Solant is used for literally everything in the game, and unless you're actively farming it every few days, you will struggle hard. Do not ignore fishing, cooking and Amito Expedition. It does seem like useless content that will waste your time, but trust me, it isn't. Through both fishing and cooking, you can earn Lucent among other benefits. Food buffs are very important in shaping your character and giving it those few extra stats you need for PvE and PvP content. You can get buffs for farming Solant, weapon mastery, and even fishing and cooking experience. Keeping up to date with leveling life skills, crafting food and unlocking new recipes isn't just there for fun. It has actual benefits and impact on your character progression and power. Don't be like me and spam dungeons every day. Have a set daily and weekly routine. There are many things in the game to do that require time. Many of those things aren't mandatory every day, but every few days it should be in your daily rotation. Not coming with a daily plan will waste a lot of time to prepare and set up for content you want to do, especially if you have a limited amount of time to play. One day you can focus on dungeons, the other day on PvP, then farming open world dungeons, then doing a few dynamic events and open world bosses. Nothing is super mandatory every day, but do not let it pile up and reach limits at the same time. Otherwise you will lose valuable resources and time. Try not to skip dynamic events and open world bosses. They are all easy to do, they give nice rewards, it doesn't take too long, where events are 15 to 20 minutes, while world bosses are not even 5 minutes. And both of them will give you the ultimate MMO feeling, seeing hundreds of players at one place in time, doing events and killing the bosses. Don't be like me and zone out into one piece of content. Spread your wings and try different amazing content Throne of Liberty offers. And lastly, just enjoy the game and have fun. If it stops being fun and enjoyable, take a break for a few days, organize your daily routine better, or you can always simply quit. But do not let the game control your enjoyment and fun, control your emotions like it did mine, where it brought me to the point where I was bored and angry at the same time, but I invested too much time already to quit. The games are supposed to be fun, so just join a guild, find a group, or even play solo if it's fun. But do not force yourself every day playing something that is making you miserable. Play at your own pace, do your own things, and have fun. If you are interested in optimizing your FPS and gameplay settings for highest performance and best visuals, check the video appearing on your screen. And if not, consider subscribing.